welcome to our webinar, part of the Nordic Tourism Collective and European Tourism Association, ITOA. A very warm welcome to this webinar on Southeast Asian markets and also an update from China. And I'd like to just mention what consists of these Southeast Asian countries. These are countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And these countries are all ahead of the curve, we would say, in Asia in terms of recovery. And we'll be diving into these markets a little bit later on. We're also going to enjoy a little special update from China and our partner there on how things are looking there and how things may develop in the near future. So let me just introduce to you today our panelists. And firstly, and most importantly, I would like to first welcome Matthias Gerber, who is from our partner Sojern, and he's the regional director of Sojern based in Germany. Hello, good morning, Matthias. Secondly, I'd like to say hello to Hannah Pearson from Pear in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and is our tourism expert, top tourism expert on Southeast Asian markets, and we'll be hearing a lot from Hannah. Good morning, Hannah. Good afternoon, Hannah. We'd also like to welcome Rixin Jiang, who is the CEO of Nordic Friend and founder of Waitan, experts in marketing and tourism on the Chinese market. Good morning, good afternoon, Rixin. Right, without any further ado, we're going to go straight into the presentations, and may I ask Matthias to start sharing his screen. And Matthias is going to set the scene on the Southeast Asian market and give us a little insight into what's been happening on these markets during the last couple of years and of course during 2022. Matthias.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I'm going to share my screen. Fantastic. Hopefully everything will be fine.
Perfect.
So you can see it. I'm going to share within the next few minutes some insights about the Southeast Asia, especially Southeast Asian people looking to travel to the Nordics. At first, let me please give me some 1 minute to introduce Sojern, that you know the context, why we are using this data. Sojern is a company that is meanwhile 15 years in the market, and we are providing data-driven advertising solutions for the travel industry. And throughout the years, we built up expertise analyzing the complete traveler path of purchase from the dream to destination. We are doing this quite successfully. We work with around 10,000 global clients, complete from the industry, such as hotel chains or airlines, attractions, tourism cruise companies, etc. We use as the source of data travel intent data we get from hundreds of partners, and we build around 350 million traveler profiles out of those travel-related data we have, so we can actually see who's traveling, when, why, and how. And through our portal, we are actually generated more than $13 billion of revenue. As a side effect, all those data we are having, we can use and share it with our partners, providing travel trends. And just be aware, the travel trends I'm sharing with you right now are snapshots of today. It's not going to be looking very much into the future, but we look what travelers are actually searching as of today, compare it to the past, and see what we can actually read out of it. And we start just with flights. So actually what we are seeing here are two charts for flight searches. And the difference is we got Europe as a whole and compared to the Nordics. And you can see different lines for each year. So if you see the gray line that's representing 2019, you can actually follow up. The 19 is pretty stable. As you see, 2020 is the year of COVID, where you see this exceptional drop, yes, within March, when all of a sudden everything was locked down in Europe within 2 weeks. And then you see the next year, actually, the growth and the situations. And if you look now into the orange line, that's actually the year of this year. And the interesting thing in Europe, and also if you see down below in the Nordics, is the drop in the end of February when the Ukraine crisis started, and everybody was actually thinking, oh, that's going to have a very big impact in traveling, especially into the Nordics, I would say, because of the close area to the region, or perhaps you haven't seen it in total. The travel trends was very positive, going over 2019 numbers. So you actually see the deep in travel need of many people. That's flight. Looking into hotels, that's the other side of the thing. Whereas people are searching for travel and actually are comparing prices on flights very intensively, it's a different story when it comes to hotel side of things. Hotel side of things, either in the Europe compared to the Nordics, haven't actually improved as much as the flights. The reason behind is actually very simple, because when you deep dive a bit more and look onto bookings, it's not as frustrating as it is here, but people just tend to book very short term when it comes to hotels. Flights are planned ahead of time, whereas hotels are booked very short terms. And this reflects also in the search amount. We go into the Southeast Asian markets. Also, again, comparison flight and hotels. As you can see, it's also a snapshot of our data. You see that you might see that Vietnam, for example. The countries which I haven't shown aren't shown up. We have to reach a certain amount of searches to get a statistically relevance. Yeah, so if it's below that, which is the case still in some countries, if you just focus on the flight search per month or per week in this case, it's just too limited to use it as a statistic significant numbers. So, but it gives you an interesting snapshot about where people are actually searching flights to the Nordics. Without a surprise, Singapore as a big hub, flying to Nordics and different locations directly, plays a big role, because they also got all the low-cost carriers flying to Singapore. But I wouldn't actually rely too much on the data itself with the total market share, with the first column. Most interesting are the columns behind, which is a week-over-week comparison, bi-weekly over bi-weekly comparison, and a month-over-month comparison. So actually a 2-month comparison about how the market is developing or has developed. And here you can see that from the flights, generally speaking, the market leaders are losing a bit, yes, whereas Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia see some of a big growth opportunities where the market and the flight search market is improving. A different story about the hotel side of things. Remember, hotels are more looked very close in ahead of travel. And here, actually, the size of the countries matters, of course, yeah, because Indonesia is a big country with a lot of people. You would expect that there's a higher market share. But the growth numbers are tremendous, which actually shows that there is a huge demand in the market for travel to the Nordics. And it is reflecting also in these huge numbers and growth numbers you are seeing here. Again, 30 days, 60 days, that's most likely a reason due to the seasonality. Yeah, so that the summertime ends, the winter time, autumn time is coming, and it reflects also in the general way of booking. The last chart shows you again how value the customers from Asian Pacific, Southeast Asia actually are. When you compare the lead time and the duration of travel, we will see that travelers are staying or planning a lot ahead time. Yeah, so we'll see 62% of the flights are planned 60 days ahead. So you can reach people who are actually in a planning phase very early, and they also stay longer. Yeah, so they tend to stay longer, making it a more valuable customer to yours. We got a lot of other data, so if you are interested, reach out to me, but actually we are now not the classical data provider. We are there for your digital online marketing when it comes to data driven, but that's a good side effect. That's it from me. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Very interesting data. Obviously, the flights people are very eager to know what's happening with the flight situation out of Southeast Asia region. And the hotel data shows that there is a very high appetite and a very big pent-up demand to get into Europe, into the Nordics. So thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Okie dokie. Now I would like to just welcome another colleague who's joined us all the way from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'd like to introduce you Nigel Wong, who is the Secretary General of the Southeast Asian Nations Tourism Association and also the Treasurer of the Malaysian Association of Tour and Travel Agents, and has his own tour operation as well. And Nigel's just joining us for a short time, just to give a short insight into how things are going and how he feels things are going, looking now and looking forward from these key Southeast Asian markets. Hello and good afternoon to you, Nigel.
Hey there, guys. My apologies for joining you so late, but delighted to be here. A fantastic presentation we saw earlier on, and if I might say, a lot of the stats that has been presented, people wanting to go to the Nordic states is actually quite clearly reflected in how the sentiment is like on the ground. So maybe just a quick update. My apologies that we have not been able to present any slides to you yet, where we have a good reason. As Hannah and those of the Malaysian counterparts will know, this is the time of year where we start preparing for the following year's largest consumer travel fair in Malaysia. And demand has come to a point where even though revenge spending has dropped, there is a significant interest in Malaysians wanting to travel abroad. And this is not just Malaysia. We have similar reports from other association members in other countries, more specifically Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, of course, and even in Thailand, where the demand for outbound travel is actually quite significant. And so as you can imagine on the floor, it's actually quite an exciting time for us, even with next year's potential, potential recession looming. So maybe just a quick update here on where Asian markets are headed outbound. We've seen a lot of activity with international airlines, especially airlines like Saudi. They have stepped up their marketing campaigns. All the Middle Eastern airlines are beginning to advertise, their flights heading to various European destinations, among others. And traditionally, Europe is one of those markets where Asians do want to visit. And so on the consumer sentiment, there is definitely a renewed interest in traveling to Europe. Now, on that note as well, we're looking at a lot of millennial travelers who are looking further abroad than Asia. Earlier on, the consensus was that most millennials would travel regionally around ASEAN. But this seems to have changed a little bit, where most millennials now starting to look further abroad. Again, despite the fact that next year may not look so good economically for Asia as well. So if I were to offer any sort of advice, look out for the younger travelers. They are definitely on their way over to Europe. There's also been a renewed interest in niche tourism. So while there's going to be a lot of demand for trips and tours to traditional nations, there's been a lot of marketing put in by other nations in Europe and the surrounding areas, especially the Balkans. We've seen quite a bit of Greece being advertised as well. We see other European nations, such as the Nordic states, that have come up quite strongly especially in some of the trade shows that we've seen and through trade roadshows and marketing that's been done directly with us. And so there's going to be a renewed interest or significantly more interest for travelers heading up to those destinations. Maybe a point of interest, there are quite a number of Asian tour operators who have set themselves up in Northern Europe, and some of them are heavily marketing products like the Aurora Borealis, for example, Arctic tours, cruises. And so we're beginning to see Asian travel agents take more notable interest in European products, especially up in the Nordic side of things. And so these are some of the general trends that we're looking at thus far in Southeast Asia. On the business, on the trade side, travel agents are looking for more new products. So again, this is reflective of their consumer demands. People are looking for not only new destinations, but fresh attractions and destinations within traditional destinations such as the UK, France, Italy, Spain, so on and so forth. And so there will be a renewed interest in also niche tourism. So there's been a lot more awareness among Asians themselves who are now pivoting more towards eco or nature-based tours and activities. And so while we promote heavily nature tourism into ASEAN, there's also a desire in Asians to go and experience what it's like when it comes to nature tourism overseas and in Europe. So I regret that I'm unable to offer you any more than that, such short notice. My sincere apologies, but I hope this has offered somewhat a little insight into what the industry is looking at here in ASEAN.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nigel. While we've got you here, can I just ask you a couple of questions before we move on to some deep drilling down from Hannah? You mentioned about the younger travelers looking to travel and hopefully hitting Europe in the near future. What are they actually craving? Are they craving the cities and the traditional city life, 2 city breaks, moving around the capitals and the key destinations? Or are they looking for more nature-based products? Are they looking to get away from it all after the 2 years of COVID and not being able to go anywhere and sitting at home? Are they craving a little bit more a sort of remote and tranquil traveling than before?
Well, not really. They're actually looking for a wide variety of experiences. So, you've got the millennials who will go to the cities. Most of them will drop by anyway because it's what excites them most. City tourism, the attractions offered by big cities. A lot of them are into culinary experiences. So while the older generation of travelers, their mode of travel is get on the bus and, visit all the well-known places and take plenty of photographs, the younger generation do like to go off to experience things that are traditionally not on their parents' or their forebears' radars. So maybe in answer to that question, there's no specifics. It basically is what's going to catch their fancy in terms of uniqueness. So even if it's in the cities, if there are attractions that are not not often marketed in the past, that have come up, something that's fresh, something that's exciting, it's just going to be as much of a point of interest to them as heading out into the Arctics to see the northern lights or camping camping out in the wilderness, waiting for whatever exotic animal comes along. So there is no specific preference. Whatever catches their fancy and whatever is new, unique, that's something that they will definitely consider.
Fabulous. You answered that very clearly. Thank you, Nigel. And one very last question is, you mentioned that there's been a few big trade shows recently. I think ITB Asia was a couple of weeks ago. Would you recommend to the European and Nordic audience, the suppliers, that it's a positive trend to actually come to the market nowadays and showcase your products and your destinations to the market, or now that we've had 2 or 3 years of very little interaction? How do you feel, how important is it to get close once again to the market?
I think it's more important than ever because traditionally in ASEAN markets, it's always been the usual destinations in Europe, right? I think most of you know what I'm talking about, older Europe. But there's been very little exposure to the Nordic side of things. We read about it a lot in books. We see a lot of ads, and it's becoming more and more. How should I say? Prevalent on social media. People are beginning to see that there are these new places to visit. But what's going to be the deciding factor is if there is a presence of Nordic operators coming into ASEAN, meeting in person, touching base with them face to face, giving tradespeople the confidence and the inspiration. The trade is looking for new products, and the Nordics are definitely new as far as Asia is concerned.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nigel. That's brilliant. I really appreciate you joining us today. And I know it's very busy times, crazy times for everybody these days, but it sounds things are moving very quickly over in Malaysia as well. So thanks so much for joining us. And now I'd like to ask Hannah if she would share her presentation where we go a little bit deeper into these Southeast Asian markets. Hannah, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, I think Matthias and Nigel have already given a really good idea of where Southeast Asian markets are at. But let me take you through just a little bit. And so for your background, Pear Anderson, we do two things. We do sales representation, focusing on the Southeast Asian outbound market and also market intelligence. And what we've been doing since the beginning of COVID is actually pulling together all updates regarding tourism in Southeast Asia. So whether that is inbound, outbound, domestic, aviation, lockdown restrictions, vaccination, into one weekly report. And basically, I have been putting together a kind of traffic light since the beginning of this, tracking what's lockdown status, what's inbound travel status, what's outbound. Are they open? Are they closed? Are there restrictions? I wanted to, I guess, illustrate that we have made a huge amount of progress in Southeast Asia comparatively. So the chart you can see at the top there, this is where we were at the beginning of 2022. And you can see a lot of the countries within Southeast Asia had some form of lockdown, like maybe restrictions on restaurants or tourism attractions not being open. For inbound again and outbound, maybe it was very heavily discouraged. You had to have testing, you had to have quarantines when you got back in. Now, where we are, this week, you see everything is green. Pretty much all lockdown restrictions have been removed. Philippines is very, very little left. Just a few schools that are still closed. Inbound, you can come in. Outbound, you can go out. So all of those kind of restrictions are gone. And if you're fully vaccinated, as most people within Southeast Asia are now, and vaccination rates generally, I think, are at least fully vaccinated, above 60%. A lot of countries are now have rolled out their booster doses. Cambodia, for example, is on like its 5th booster dose already. It is very easy as an outbound traveler now to be able to travel over to Europe and not have to face very cumbersome restrictions when you get back in, which was not the case, in the first half of the year. But little by little, all of these restrictions have been removed. I wanted to show, Nigel was saying and Matthias was saying, there is this, interest in outbound travel. And this is certainly something that I have also seen too. I love this. If you've never used this, you should go check it out, Google Destination Insights. It's a fantastic tool, and you can see what's going on in terms of outbound travel searches. And you can see here across Southeast Asia, outbound travel demand, and these are just searches, right? This is not necessarily people traveling, but it is booming. The only country where is perhaps an exception is the Philippines, but that is probably because outbound travel from the Philippines has been permitted since something like October 2021. So for them, there is not that much pent-up travel because they have been able to go. It's been a little bit difficult, but they have been permitted. Whereas countries, such as Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia have only really, in the last quarter or so, really removed all of these restrictions, but it's booming. So where are they searching to? And, Sojern shared a few of these too, but, from Indonesia is what people have been searching from 1st of August to 20th of October. You can see there are quite a few European countries in there. We've got UK, we've got France, we've got Germany. And, I do where do Nordic countries fall in this? I mean, 39, 40, 41, but they're in there. They're in the top 50. What you can see is that there is a lot of interest still about neighboring countries. So Malaysia, Thailand is very high, but also and Australia and UAE. So Indonesians they have really been traveling throughout the pandemic. Even when, they had to undergo like a 5-day quarantine when they returned back, they would still travel. So they are really very, very keen travelers. Again, this is a YouGov destination index, and it was more based on responsible travelers, caring about their environmental impact. And I would argue that these are probably the kind of travelers who would be considering the Nordics as well. Again, Switzerland is there in the top 10, and Switzerland is not a cheap country to visit, nor necessarily are the Nordics. So I think that indicates that there is that interest, but also that budget to spend. Same in Malaysia. UK is up there. Nordic countries as well, Iceland, Finland, Denmark in the top 10. The Philippines, we've got the UK. Again, you can see some kind of common countries here. All four, Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Norway, no Sweden, but they're all in the top 50 as well. And Thailand, you can see UK is one of their top countries, but they actually have the 5, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, all in the top 40. So I would argue that Thailand is actually and we have seen that before historically, pre-pandemic, a very interesting market for the Nordics. They tend to be a little bit more mature, the travelers there. They tend to go for slightly more, immersive kind of itineraries. If I compare it to a market, say like Malaysia, where they call them touch and go tours, right? So it's like trying to combine as many countries or as many destinations in one go. Thailand tends to maybe a little bit more authentic, I would say. Again, Thailand, Switzerland is at the top there. Singapore, where are they searching to? UK is in there. Again, plenty of Nordic countries in the top 50, Finland hitting top 30 even. So there's really that awareness there, that drive for them to travel. Again, Switzerland, hugely popular there. UK, Germany, also falling in the top 10. If we're zooming in on Singapore, the stats that 81% of Singaporeans intend to travel overseas for leisure within the next year. So there is really, you could understand this is why there is really this pent-up demand still from the Singaporean outbound market. And that makes sense. It's a city-state. They have not really been able to travel anywhere for 2 years. They have not only and have saved up their money, but they've also saved up their annual leave, often, not clearing it and just holding on to it. So now they're in this position of having a bit more disposable income and also the chance to take a longer holiday. Vietnam. Here you can see in the top 10, no European countries, but Denmark makes it to number 25, Finland to number 29. So it is there, it is on that kind of awareness. So what other trends are there coming out of Southeast Asia? Well, there are different perceptions, and I think it's always really important when you think of Southeast Asia that it isn't just one block, right? It is made up of, ASEAN is made up of 10 different countries. These are all different, very different mentalities, different cultures, different religions, different perceptions, different outlooks. And this, demonstrates that kind of nicely. So if you're looking, obstacles for travel cost versus health risks, Malaysians much more concerned about travel costs. Singaporeans and Thais more concerned when it comes to health risks. So even within Southeast Asia, there are a lot of different nuances there to think about. Nigel was alluding to this earlier that, the world in general is, potentially facing recession, Southeast Asian economies also facing challenges perhaps for next year. And if you look at Thais, Indonesians, they were asked, has inflation had an impact on their planning cost of travel? Well, 56% said no, but that means 44% said yes. So we are seeing it's having some kind of impact. But I would imagine in the short term, it's not going to have as much of an impact, right? We do have this, what they call revenge travel. We do have this pent-up demand for people who want to travel out. Whether that will continue into 2023, it's still a bit of a guess, I'd say right now. And we've also seen, Nigel was alluding to travelers wanting to take more eco kind of adventures, sustainability is becoming more important. Now, I would add that it is not the driving factor, I would say, for Southeast Asian travelers still by, any stretch of the imagination. But little by little, travelers are thinking about it more. It is, on their radar. And particularly, I know with Nordics being a really excellent destination for sustainability, there's definitely an angle there that I think Nordics can work on. But it all comes at a price. And I think for the Southeast Asian market, cost is still king, really. You can see right there on the right-hand side, customers willing to pay over 10% of the total price for a sustainable option. 0.5% for Singaporeans, 7.2% for Thais. That's pretty low, right? So they have this intent. They are looking at it. Whether they will put their money on it is a different matter. And just to give you a bit of a flavor with some stats from different Singaporean agents or other agents in the region, like Nigel said, there is this boom for outbound travel. EU Holidays, big tour provider in Singapore, they've seen bookings for New Zealand packages surge 200%. Super Travel's another big group agent have said outbound bookings for Europe have recovered to 80% of their 2019 levels. I talked to Switzerland Tourism. I was on a panel with them at ITB Asia last week. Southeast Asia tourism in general, I think, to Switzerland is now something like just 30% down on 2019. Singapore has actually exceeded 2019 levels. I think Malaysia is close to exceeding it. So there is this demand to travel. People are traveling. But of course, there are challenges facing outbound tour operators right now. One of the key ones, and this applies more for Indonesia, for the Philippines, for Thailand, for Vietnam, is visas. And this is a really big issue, especially for trying to obtain European destination visas. It's challenging. Group tour operators can put together a tour, but if the embassy is, 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months, 3-month waits to be able to get that visa, that then becomes very difficult for them to sell. That becomes a real liability when they're thinking about taking on group booking seats, right? Because are you going to take that gamble that your passengers are actually going to be able to get the visa in time? And if they don't get it in time, the consumers are going to expect you to be able to cancel everything free of charge, right? Or postpone it, which isn't necessarily possible. So that's definitely one issue that's facing outbound tour operators here. We're talking about the economy earlier. Inflation is growing. It's at some highs across Southeast Asia. For the most part, this is obviously affecting everyday items. I would say that it is not at the level of Europe, in terms of electricity rises, mostly because a lot of these tend to be subsidized nationally. And the governments are really kind of cushioning that blow, I think, for a lot of the general public in Southeast Asia. But, you go to the supermarket, you see things are increasing. There is that factor. And like I said, is that going to affect into 2023? Quite possibly. One of the other obstacles is airfares and connected to that, lack of flights and limited seats. So air connections are increasing from Southeast Asia, but they are not at, the same 2019 levels that they were. It may be that a lot of the airlines have restored back the majority of their network now, but they are not at those same frequencies that they were previously. You've also got that complication of avoiding Russian and Ukrainian airspace, which makes flights longer from certain locations, say from Hanoi, tends to be even longer. And of course, longer flights also means more expensive costs. So we have the situation here in Southeast Asia where a lot of group agents are really seeing consumer demand for the year end. But they just either cannot find the flight tickets to be able to sell that tour, or the flight tickets are just prohibitively expensive. And again, consumers are going to turn around and choose a different destination. And I would say that the last challenge, this is for Europe, really, is now that East Asia is starting to open up. We're talking Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, are all becoming a lot easier to visit. Pre-pandemic, these are really key destinations. These are very, very popular destinations for Southeast Asians to travel to, particularly Japan. Now that these other destinations are making things easier, Europe is facing some serious competition. In terms of flights, it is not so dissimilar. I mean, East Asia is more medium haul, but if you fly to North Japan, that could be a 10-hour flight direct. If you're transiting it, it could be 15 hours. To Europe, equally the same, 12 or 13 hours. Maybe in terms of cost, they're kind of roughly similar. So I think with the opening of East Asia, it is going to pose a challenge, basically, to European tour operators. And, as Nigel was saying, it's all about trying to educate the trade, keep them excited, help them with new products coming to the region. And of course, that's an advantage that East Asia has. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, they have been here the whole time during the pandemic. They have been doing consumer marketing. They have been attending consumer travel fairs. They've been attending trade travel fairs. They've been doing trade activations and conferences and webinars and keeping their destination really top of mind for the travel trade here in Southeast Asia. European tourism boards, sadly, have not really kept that. There are a few exceptions. Switzerland, I think, again, has done exceptionally well and is now benefiting from that, right? That demand, because they were there throughout the pandemic. I think there's competition, and Europe needs to kind of up its game. So I probably went over time, but that was a kind of brief overview, some of the challenges and where we are. And I have this weekly report. Feel free to sign up. So thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Hannah. Fantastic insight there. And just a couple of quick questions to pick up on, if I may, because you really have covered everything we really needed to hear. First of all, the resilience word was very interesting for us, that the Southeast Asians do want to travel, and they will travel come what may, as long as the restrictions allow it to do so. Do you think that, and you kind of alluded to at the end, that the European destination is now in a similar position as it was in 2019 in terms of being able to attract, or is the airline issue, is maybe the lack of seats a real factor that at the moment will weigh it down? And do you think that there will be a resumption of many of the old routes that are not so frequent at the moment in the next few months? So 2023 may be possible for Europe to grow the business once again a little bit more. Yeah,
I mean, Europe is always a really popular destination for Southeast Asia. So there is no doubt about that. I was saying East Asia is going to open, it's going to give Europe competition, but there will always be market for Europe. Like you said, though, I think higher airfares is something that's potentially holding things back at the moment. And we saw a lot of airlines withdraw. For example, Malaysia Airlines now only operates, its only European route is to London. Before, they used to operate to a few other destinations. I think, for example, Singapore Airlines used to fly to Barcelona. They still haven't resumed that. So there are still some key routes, I think, into Europe that are missing. But a lot of the Southeast Asian market tend to transit into Europe, and I'm thinking particularly for the Nordic countries. They would be using airlines like Emirates, like Qatar Airways, like Etihad, or maybe Turkish, rather than necessarily the European airlines. And the Middle Eastern airlines have been pretty aggressive at restoring that kind of connectivity into Southeast Asia. So I do see that kind of stabilizing next year. But it's I imagine just a case of the airlines weighing it all up and which routes to restore, and waiting until they see the really solid demand there.
That's exactly what it is, and I think you've really clarified it for everybody that we need to see this demand in order for it's a catch-22 situation. The airlines are ready to add on routes when they know the demand is there both ways. So I think the most encouraging thing is the appetite for these markets is there. The interest in Europe has never waned, and it's probably as strong as it ever has been, despite the competition. And yes, there is the inflation factor which you brought in, which we know is going to be an issue for many during the next year. But hopefully there'll be plenty of travellers that have saved and got disposable income from the last couple of years that will be able to travel. The visa issue was one that I think was noted by many. I know our colleagues in Itoa are working very hard on these visa issues. Thanks for bringing it up again, Hannah, for sure. And I think it's very important that European destinations and products and organizations know that we've really got a clean slate now after COVID, that your destinations are interesting, are there. They need to be informed. We need to interact with the Southeast Asian markets. They are traveling, they are back, they are on the road to recovery, and I think as much activity, sales and marketing activity is really important. So thanks very much, Hannah. That's a wonderful update from you. Appreciate it very much. Now we're just going to have to spend a few minutes, just because we've noticed within the Nordic Collective and with Itoa that there is still an incredible interest in what is happening in China. We know that there's no travel at the moment. We know what the situation is. And we have our colleague and top expert, Rixin Jiang, in Shanghai for us today, who's going to give us the very latest of what the situation is. I think we need to be very clear about it, about how important the market has been traditionally. It's the largest outbound market in the world, but we know there is zero at the moment. So it's really important to keep knowing what's happening in China, how things are bubbling up in terms of travel. And Rixin is going to give us a little quick update on that right now. Over to you, Rixin, and hi.
Thanks, Paul, and hello, everybody. Greetings from Shanghai. I'll just mention to the crew that I personally just get out of the neighborhood lockdown this Monday. So yes, still we are kind of still in the 2020 COVID mood, or even harsher. But a quick info about me myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nordic Friend. We're originally from Finland. So we are a marketing and communication agency helping Nordic brands do marketing expansion in China. And before COVID, more than half or more than 60% of our daily work is helping Finnish and Nordic tourism clients to help with the market in China, to communicate better with the trade partners and the consumers. But overnight, or in the past almost 3 years, there's basically very small amount of activities happening for the outbound tourism marketing. But we have been keeping an eye on the whole situation. So I'd like to brief you about the overall situations. I understand that outside of China, you guys might be quite busy with the recovery, with all the international incoming consumers and the clients. But what about China? Since before COVID, it is a very important market, and when possibly this market might recover to be part of the landscape. So I have only 3 pages, so it won't be super long. I'm going to brief you about some facts about the COVID situations and about policies in China. We are still having this zero COVID policy with a dynamic clearing saying. So we are having Omicron. There's a lot of positive cases without any symptoms, but the government is still sticking to this dynamic clearing zero COVID policy. It means with the current Omicron virus, it's getting more and more difficult to have the zero aim. That also means policy-wise, there has to be a lot of lockdowns happening. And for me personally, where I live, the compound requires daily PCR tests in upcoming months. So there's still like in the new normal COVID mood for us. In this springtime, Shanghai, as the largest and the richest city, most developed city in China, have a total city lockdown for 2 months. It has, it's okay for now. It's not the whole city being locked down. But if you look at some other provinces and cities within China, they're still having the city lockdown. And when we have this international traveling or leisure tourism to Europe or to Nordic countries, not something people will search or will plan for at this moment. They are mostly searching for vegetables and food, and when they can, be a free man in the city. So still, some other cities and regions are still under either total lockdown or partly or semi-lockdowns. or even strict entry policy in between Chinese cities at this very moment. And we are having frequent PCR testing even domestically when you travel within China, and that has to become a new normal. For some quarantine policies, which is affecting the international traveling a lot, not only about the virus and the positive cases. We are having a mandatory quarantine time, which is the 7+3 model. So 7 days central quarantine and 3 days home quarantine. So that is, people already see a relief from that because that is much less from the 14+7 model. But some other facts is that in the Q2 of this year, the Immigration Authority of China issued more than 200,000 new ordinary passports, an increase of more than 61% compared to Q1. It is actually okay from day one of the pandemic that you can travel abroad. There has never been a total ban on international traveling. As long as you want to bear in mind there will be a quarantine when you come back. You want to afford the very expensive flight tickets, and you have a valid visa, you can fly anytime. And there has actually never been a ban. But for most of the ordinary travelers, if the quarantine policy is like this, if it is such a hassle, if you got COVID when you come back to China, health is one thing, but a lot of the hassle is not really about health. Of course, there is not much happening regarding outbound traveling. There has been some rumors about China is not really allowing any kind of inbound and outbound traveling, which is not exactly true. And the suspending passport issuing is also just a rumor. So if you want to have a new passport, you have to have a reason and you have to prove that. And tourism is not a necessary traveling reason from the policy saying. So still, anyone with a valid visa and ticket can travel from or to China anytime for now. After all these facts, what I want to mention is that if we are still having these same restrictions, the international outbound traveling will remain the same as how it is. But we have noticed some signs and some new changes. I can't say they are the signs that will reopening the borders or resume the international outbound traveling anytime soon, but just for your reference. For example, we have seen the COVID restrictions being lifted in Hong Kong and also Taiwan in Q3. That is, since Hong Kong has played a very special role on connecting the whole world and mainland China. So how the travel industry is gonna be if the mainland and Hong Kong connections model might change, and then the Hong Kong and the whole world are now the same, that there's no restriction. So it's something interesting, and we should keep an eye on that. Some other signs, which, as I mentioned, we could have different interpretations. I'm not saying that we are reopening with these signs. For example, German Chancellor is going to visit China next week with a huge business delegation. This is one of the very first major Western countries, top leader to visit China directly after 2020 pandemic. And also G20 summit is going to be held in Bali next month. It's set or not yet confirmed that the Chinese leader will participate. So starting from the top leaders in and out, inbound and outbound visits that might give some signs on relaxations of the traveling policies, but not necessarily, to be honest. Flights, China normally have 2 seasons of flight time schedules every year. So it's changing twice a year all the time. So starting from the last day of October, China will execute a new winter and springtime flight schedule. China has plans to increase international flights from this weekend to 840 a week for the next season. That's a jump of more than 100%, so doubling how it is in the past season. That is one sign if we look at the slide. So after the new policy coming back to China has been, the flight tickets has been much cheaper. For visas, it's still something, as Hannah mentioned, it might be the same for Southeast Asian tourists. It's the same for the Chinese tourists, we need a visa. And during the pandemic, most of the European countries' visa center has been shut down for tourism visas. But in Q3, French embassy in China confirms to continue or resume issuing tourism visas normally without any restrictions. So as I mentioned, if you got the flight tickets, if you got a visa and your passport, you can just go. People just don't have 10 days time when they return for COVID quarantine. Policy-wise, there is a very high structural policy from the National Development and Reform Commission, also from a couple of days ago. China will facilitate the entry and exit of the country of multinational companies like the top CEOs and the boss technicians, experts, and their families under the prevention control COVID-19. That is also a pain point for a lot of the foreign company executive is that they don't want to come to China right now because of the COVID and everything. But for those group of people, the entry is easy. So when we talk about outbound, the coming back or the inbound, the entry policies also matters a lot for the decision making. Another thing might not be exactly related to COVID, but 4 provinces, including Shanghai, have been permitted to expand the pilot program to allow foreign invested travel agencies to engage in outbound Chinese tourism business, which means before this policy is banned or is not allowed, only Chinese domestic or not totally foreign invested travel agencies can sell the China tourism, outbound tourism products. But right now it's okay. So if some of the audience here, if you are thinking about sell as a travel agency selling outbound tourism products, right now there are the green lights for now. So here are some signs from governmental visits, the top level visits, to the flights, to the visas, or to the policies of COVID restrictions and inbound. We might have seen some gradual changes going towards the recovery. But again, I can't say. I'm not quite sure. In the past 3 years, we have been predicting so frequently. We have been looking at the Winter Olympics. We have looking at the a lot of specific timing, but it turns out that it just no predictions works. So what's next? We are here. I'm giving you some really bold and personal insights or predictions from me myself. For example, group travelers in the Chinese context, meaning the ones organized by travel agencies. So there's no ban on free FIT travelers, but the travel agency group traveling products are clearly and they are banned from the government policy. So it's not to be sold immediately. If I'm thinking who will be the first ones to travel with the valid visa and passport, it will be the free FIT travelers. And maybe for a specific long period of time, those ones, the Chinese FIT travelers, will be the majority of the Chinese incoming tourists to Europe. Official delegations, which I mean the national-owned companies or the government official delegations, might come later than the business travelers from totally private-owned companies like me. If I have a visa, I can just fly if I want. But if it's from a Chinese government delegation, they might come later. But as far as I know, there used to be a lot of those kind of delegation visits, which bring a lot of income for the suppliers as well. Please bear in mind, there's a large amount of Chinese customers and immigrants living outside of China, including the students, which has never been stopped in the past 3 years about Chinese students studying abroad. Those are also Chinese clients, basically. If you are thinking about marketing channels, these people or these clients also read Chinese content, even from the Chinese specific social media. So those are actually the first group of people, the first group of Chinese speaking customers that you might have to visit. at first, because they are basically part of the other markets. But marketing-wise or services-wise, they are actually also the Chinese-speaking customers. Recovery will definitely come gradually and step by step. So I think FID trawlers will be the first ones, and even might be the core ones for a while. For the timeline, it's really hard to say. I can just give you like another half a year timeline, and let's see. So maybe Q2 of 2023, because there's always the specific timing of, for example, in the January and February, there is the Chinese Spring Festival, and then in March, there will be the National Congress meeting. So maybe after that, I really can't say. So maybe let's get back in another half a year, and we can have more data to see. One last tip for welcoming back the Chinese market is that it will come back just sooner or later. So if you want to do some research or some products optimization to fit into this Chinese language services and products, or to do some marketing activities and preparations, do it in advance. Because I know everyone's busy with other markets right now, but if we are thinking about how these tasks should be due from 2015 to 2019, it's probably the same, but more difficult. These are my quick updates. Thanks again for having me here.
Thank you very much, Rixin. Great insight as always there, and you've been very open and honest about what the situation is now. But the impression that we're getting, and maybe you can just sort of rubber stamp that, is that the market is there, the infrastructure is there, the flights will be there when things open up. It's just a question of when, and the appetite for Europe, I guess, in China is as strong as ever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we talk about this so-called recovery or revenge traveling, the Chinese tourists might, have more fierce revenge than the other markets, because we are stuck here for much more longer time than the other tourists. So yeah, definitely.
And one last question, economic-wise in China, generally things are maybe a little bit more stable than in Europe and in other countries in terms of inflation and energy crisis, etc. The economy is ticking over okay in China, or not?
Same trends. It was still having inflation, the economy is going down, but when I say going down, it's actually growing slower. It is not growing negatively. So growing slower, still around 3 or 5%. And the base is the second largest economy in the world. So what I want to emphasize in such a webinar is that China has a huge income gap between the different social classes. And it's always the more middle class or upper middle class travelers who will visit Europe, and specifically Nordic countries. And those group of people and tourists will basically still be having money to travel. So if you look at the overall consuming willingness, they might go step down a little bit, but still it will be strong as well.
Great, thank you very much, Rixin. Brilliant insight as always, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the near future. Thanks, Rixin. And so I'd like to thank all our panelists today. We had so much to get through that we haven't got much time for the questions. We know there's a couple on there. We will be getting back to you directly after this session on email. But I'd like to thank all our panelists very much for joining today. I'd just like to also mention that we have an event in Ottawa which we'd just like to share with you, which is on the 22nd of November. It's the Meet the Asian Tour Operators and Agents. This is for all European suppliers looking east to the Southeast Asian and East Asian markets. There is still possibilities to register for this event organized by our colleagues at ETOA. So please contact Karen. Details are on the screen there. So with no further ado, I'd like to thank very much Nigel, who joined us earlier, Hannah for her great insight into the Southeast Asian market, Rixin for our update in China, and Matthias for setting the scene with what is happening data-wise from this region into Europe. Our next event will be later in November on the UK market into Europe and to the Nordics. So we'll hope you can join us for that. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And to our panelists, we really appreciate your time. See you all very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Thank you.